Hey guys, welcome back to another video from Homesteading Off the Grid. If you're here for the Bigfoot Sasquatch and the Bigfoot Sasquatch only, go ahead and fast forward to 8 minutes and 29 seconds because that's where you're going to see it. Not. Okay, I would have no way of knowing that. How could I know that? You don't know what you're going to see and when you're going to see it. That's how this works. You might not see anything in this video, but if you pay attention, you might learn something. You might learn how to spot the first day of the end of your career. I'm going to share that story with you here. I was talking about that last night up here with my son. Let me tell you this one quick, 60 seconds or less. Me and my son, we like to sit around somewhere outside, like the last half hour of daylight. And we're sitting up here last night in these chairs up here at our campground. We didn't have a fire. It's been in the 90s. It's super hot. 2 nights ago, we were sitting on our back porch and we had a deer come up. That we could have reached out and pet her. She was so close. It was a doe, of course, why I said she. But she could tell there was something there on the porch that wasn't usually there at dark, but she didn't know what it was, and she kept coming in slow and slow. So last night, me and my son are up here. My beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, she had been with us. She went down to the house to get something and come back up. I think she wanted a Diet Coke. So I was sitting in this chair where I'm sitting now, and my son was sitting here, and we're talking. So you see behind me here, and I'm shaking a bit because I just biked, I don't know, maybe 9 or 10, well, maybe 8 miles. I did a big loop. Took me 45 minutes to do it. So I'm doing my cool down right now. I know I don't look sweaty. It's because I changed shirts. I was soaking wet, and I didn't want to come up here soaking wet. So anyway, we hear something in the woods back here, and we see, like I said, so many deer, foxes. I've been sitting here and have raccoons walk by me, possums, squirrels. I had no clue how much squirrels loved the wild raspberries, the black raspberries that we have in our fields. I always wondered, well, what do squirrels eat in the summer when the nuts aren't ready yet? Man, they're in these fields, in this meadow up here, eating the heck out of our berries. So we're sitting here. We're hearing something in the woods. So my son, he just stops talking. I look over at him. He was sitting right there in that chair, and he's looking right here, exactly where my finger is. Depth perception in the phone might not be accurate, but that is 25 yards. And he's looking like this. He's like, so I turn around like this and I look back, and there is this huge black bear right there. He came out of the woods right here, and we're going to go into the woods now. I just wanted to show you. You know what? I'll walk over here to show you how close it was. Came out of the woods into the trail, and it starts coming into the meadow. It was big. It was fat. It was healthy. Ordinarily, I would have sat there and watched it, but here's the thing about bears. At least, I'm on the East Coast, so we have a lot of black bears. And make sure I don't walk into one right here. But they are relatively harmless. Yes, you do hear people getting mauled by bears every now and then, or if you read Bigfoot Sasquatch Files Volume 1, The Unfortunate Demise of Jittery J, you often hear people's accidental or whatever, their untimely demises being attributed to bear maulings, but it may be something else. Wink, wink. Potentially. So anyway, bear came out right here. I stood up and I just said, hey, bear. I didn't yell, I didn't scream, but I wanted to make sure that it saw me. Because they can be dangerous, of course, when they have their young in the spring, but also they can be dangerous if you surprise them. Like, I didn't want that thing to get so close to us that it just all of a sudden it recognized we were there and then maybe take a swipe at us as it turned to run. And so since my son was with me, I wanted to make sure this thing recognized us and saw us. So it came back into the woods. And we could hear it over here meandering around. So when Dearly started coming back up, I gave her the universal sign for be quiet. She came up, and then from down there where we were able to peer up underneath the tree line, and we actually saw that it did have a cub with it. We saw one little cub. So we saw 2 bears sitting up here last night. So yeah, you never know what you're going to see. I wish I'd have had my camera with me. That's when I always see like so much of the cool stuff. Well, we see cool stuff even when I do have the camera, don't we? I'm trying to steady it here. Now, here's a story I thought of. Here about a month or so ago, I was working on putting some of my novels I'd written years and years ago back into print, because I've got so many wonderful viewers who actually don't just talk crap to look good on social media. You guys, well, literally, you put your money where your mouth was. You said that if I made these books available in print, like the Bigfoot Sasquatch files and stuff, you'd actually buy them, and you actually did. So I went back and put the others like Isle of Capri. If you like Bigfoot Sasquatch and you want a Bigfoot Sasquatch story, you like the paranormal, the supernatural, it's all in there. Go read Isle of Capri in print or Kindle, available in the link in this description. So anyway, I'm doing this, and for instance, I think that was a 325-page novel or something. I don't know. Fair market value for a novel of that length is about $15 or $16, something like that. So when I got to the point of pricing it, I'm putting that in there. And here, guys, I'm a human being, and I am as flawed as the rest of us. I try to get better. I try to be better. I check my motives, but I am human. So the thought hit me, man, I should charge a lot more for this, because these people, they buy this because they support me. And well, what's wrong with that? And look at, I wrote this all these years ago and it didn't really do that well, and things are better now, and man, I could triple my revenues and blah, 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 blah. But then I stopped and I remembered a story, and of course I priced it at fair market value, and I'm going to tell you that story about how you can tell the first day of the end of your career, okay? There we go. We got something throwing stuff at us again. It's funny. We had this happening yesterday, and people pointed out where they saw something duck behind a tree. I'm going to sit at the exact same spot where that was seen. And then also, somebody mentioned about how it seemed like something started throwing stuff at us when I got to the points in the stories where I felt like maybe a little bit frustrated or some negative energy. And that's kind of where I just got to in this story. We had something thrown at us. Okay, so I'm going to try to do a slow scan as I talk. So I've mentioned before in some other videos that my first 8 years out of college was spent as a stockbroker. I spent 6 years working for a sizable firm, very successful firm. I didn't really feel like it was for me, and I thought, well, maybe it's the firm, maybe it's the way they're doing things. So I went into private practice for 2 years, and then I got out of it completely. That's when I went into the military for a while. And so anyway, when I worked for that firm, and it was a reputable firm, I'm not going to mention their name because I'm just not going to give them free advertisement, but they did good by their investors. They had a good strategy, good policy. There's this one guy, and like all the brokers I knew there were class acts. They were wonderful people. I've thought about dropping in to see some of them. I actually did go see one guy when I got back to the U.S. I hadn't seen him in forever. He acted like he couldn't remember me. That was odd. But anyway, I mean, we only worked together for 6 years. So anyway, yeah, I don't think it was genuine either. He knew who I was. That was weird. So anyway, there was this one guy. Okay, at the time, this firm had over 10,000 brokers, okay, nationwide. They're in several other countries too, Canada and the UK, and we got a lot of viewers in those places. Thanks for being here, guys and girls. There was this guy close to my area here who was the second biggest producing broker in that firm. He made close to $2 million a year in gross commissions after his partnership and his profitability bonuses and his net commission payout and stuff. He was making over $1 million a year. He was, at the time, in his mid-40s. He was tall. He was good-looking. He was athletic. He looked like a movie star. And he just had this charisma about himself that when he talked, people would listen. And man, was he a shyster. I'm going to move around just a little bit. So anyway, they'd have these cheerleader sessions every quarter. It's where everybody, they call them regional meetings. Everybody would get together and pat themselves on the back and talk about how great they were. And then, you know, the next 2 weeks after these sessions, of course, revenues would go up because everybody was motivated to get out there and sell stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. A little more so than they were before the cheerleading RAH sessions. And they would always feature these guys to speak, to talk about all this stuff. And like they would have these vendors in, these wholesalers from annuity companies or mutual fund companies. And anytime a vendor would be there and they'd be like, we would like to introduce this new product to you. If you feel, you know, it could fit your customers' needs, you might want to try this. And then this guy, and I'm not going to say his name, he'd raise his hand. He would always raise his hand. He'd say, what's the payout? What's the payout? That means what was his commission for it? And if it was anything under 3%, he would just get up and leave the room. He wouldn't even sit. He didn't want to even hear about it. So, you know, I could go on and on with stories about this guy. Stories I heard about him from his friends. I mean, he would call people at 6 o'clock in the morning because he knew they were still asleep. And they'd answer the phone, not even realizing, you know, who is it? And it would say, he'd say he had to call before the market even opened because this new investment was out and they needed to sell this and buy that and blah, blah, blah. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, just do it. And they'd hang up and go back to sleep. And a lot of times they couldn't even remember the call. If he called them, so whatever. At one of these RAH sessions, I was supposed to spend the night with him. I was supposed to room with him. So me, him, and a couple other guys, they would put these top producers in with the newer, younger guys that weren't really producing much at all yet to try to motivate us. And man, I listened to this guy talk for 10 or 15 minutes. And this is crazy. I left in the middle of the night, and this was down at Smith Mountain Lake in southwestern Virginia. I was 2.5 hours away from home. I drove back in the middle of the night. And my boss called me the next day. He was upset. And he's like, why did you do that? And I said, you're not going to really, this answer is not going to make much sense to you. And guys, you know, I've talked before about only recently having discovered that I'm an empath. And that's why I can't be around people that like to just be negative all the time and look at all the bad things in the world and not focus on the good. They drain me. They just drain me. I can't be around that. So I told my boss, I said, I felt like I was in the presence of the devil being with that guy. Being in the same room with that guy. So he said, yeah, that's weird, but he says, I know exactly what you're talking about. So they just made sure I never roomed with that guy again. So about a year later, we're at one of these RAH sessions down at Virginia Beach. And there was another guy there who was in the top, probably the top 50 producers in the firm. He was the second biggest producer in Virginia, second to this guy. He was probably top 50 in the entire firm out of 10,000 brokers. Okay, so they had these two guys talking. They had the first guy, the guy I was telling you about, the shyster, the guy that made me feel like I was in the presence of Satan. And he went on and on for 20 or 30 minutes about how this is about getting paid. You want to make the most as you can. He talked about certain investments not to sell because the commission. I heard, it's like a shadow. Then I heard knocks. And then like a growl. Okay, keep getting my 6. Remember I said go to 8 minutes and 29 seconds? I should have said 14 minutes and 24 seconds, something like that. But I didn't know that. I can't predict the future. So anyways, going on and on. Don't sell these like certificates of deposit. Don't even sell those because they only paid out 1% commission and blah, blah, blah. It's about getting paid and blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on. Well, then it was the other guy's turn to talk. And he made one statement. And this guy was kind of like a legend in the firm, and he was older. He was in his 60s. He'd been doing it over 30 years. So not only was he a big producer, but he had longevity. He had time, and it's one of the reasons he was a big producer. They refer to it as time in the business. If you do something long enough and you do it correctly and you do it for the right reasons, eventually you might just accidentally get pretty good at it. Okay? So when he spoke, all he said was this. He said, the first time you recommend an investment to any of your customers based upon what you get paid rather than what the investment pays your customer, that is the first day of the end of your career. And that's it. He didn't say anything else. And the room was deadly silent, like a uncomfortably long silence. And he said, okay, let's go to lunch. And he got it, and we went to lunch. So here was a guy, been doing this for over 30 years, top 50 producers in the firm, second biggest producer in the state of Virginia. And there's a lot of old money here. So this guy was making a killing too. And he said that when you are more concerned with what you get paid versus what the people you serve get out of the deal or what they get paid, that's the first day of the end of your career. So I remembered that, the short version, of course, when I was thinking about jacking up the prices on those full-length novels that are fairly market valued at about 15, 16 bucks. I didn't do it. I've got no problem with making $1 or $2 off of 1 million people, but I just never liked the idea of trying to make $1 million off of 1 or 2 people. You hear that? Something's throwing something at us down here too. I don't know if that means they liked the story or they didn't, but that's your story for the day. And I'm going to try, no promises, but I'm going to try here at some point to take my phone with me and get some footage on that loop I just went on this morning. It was 8 or 9 miles, I don't know. But it was absolutely gorgeous. And who knows what we might see out there. So thanks for being here with me for another episode of the PBS. The potential Bigfoot Sasquatch show. All right, so you ever watch a movie and you think it's over and then the credits run and then there's like that final scene? The Avengers, the Marvel series do that a lot. So you learn to never leave the theater. I hope you haven't left the theater because I kind of left off how the story ended for the other guy. I was getting something thrown at us back there and I just felt like I should get out of there. So now I'm down here safely in the backyard. Well, it's a big backyard. The guy, the shyster, the good-looking movie star-looking guy that was always worried about how much he got paid, not caring about how the customer got paid. The next year, at the summer RAH session or whatever, he wasn't there to speak because he was no longer with the firm. Turns out that, people had caught on to what was going on with him, and they filed lawsuits against the firm. And, of course, the firm canned him. They got rid of him. They let him, well, whatever. They got rid of him. And I don't know whatever came of the lawsuits. I was off in Iraq fighting terrorists by then. So that was the point of that story. The other guy, the older guy who pointed out, that the first time you sell an investment based upon what you got paid instead of what your customer got paid, he went on to retire, live happily ever after. So that was the point of that story. I know it would have been better if I could have tied that in there at the end, but something in those woods was throwing something at me. Potentially.